The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is solely of the creator and may not necessarily reflect the views, thoughts, or opinions of the listeners. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. ChatGPTs and AI technologies were not used or harmed in the creation of this podcast. This podcast is 100% human-made by me, your host, Melanie. And this is Under the Moon Paranormal presents Ohio Legends, a podcast where me, as explorer of Ohio Paranormal and Creepy, is brought to you by the full moon. So this month's full moon is going to occur on May 12th around 1 p.m. and Scorpio is opposing the sun and Taurus. Now, let me rephrase this. This podcast is 100% human-made by me, so I'm gonna mispronounce things because my poor education in rural Ohio. So, if my pronunciation and my Ohio accent doesn't bother you, you're gonna love this podcast, I promise. So, the full moon, May 12th, around 1 p.m. It's emotional intensity, okay? So the Scorpio full moon is known deeply for current emotional events. It's bringing hidden feelings to the surface and encourages the comfort of your emotions and to express them openly. So transformation and release is also a big theme for this full moon. This full moon marks a time for personal transformation, urging individuals to let go of what no longer serves them. And it may be a prompt significant change in relationships and personal commitments. Conflict and resolutions. The full moon is accompanied by challenging aspect between Mercury and Pluto, okay, which may lead to conflicts, especially regarding different viewpoints. Do not talk to your family about politics or religion right now, okay? So it's advised to approach discussions with care and avoid unnecessary dramas. So your self-worth and values are also going to take a toll. It invites for a reflection on personal values, self-worth, and dynamics of intensity and trust in relationships. So this is a time to assess what truly matters to you and how it aligns with your connections to other people. Okay, so emotional declarations. As feelings intensify, this full moon encourages making emotional declarations and addressing any unresolved issues in relationships. Another thing to look forward to through this full moon is Pluto retrograde. Okay, Pluto will be in retrograde during this period, inviting deeper introspection and reflection on personal power, dynamics, transformations, and that have occurred since an entry to Aquarius. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. So, that's your full moon report for May 12th. I almost said March. Okay, so this episode's going to be a little different. I'm going to bring you two stories from Creepy, Ohio, okay? One is false. It became a hoax. One is actually true. So I'm going to tell you which is true and which is false after I tell you both of these short Ohio stories. Okie dokie. So our first story takes us to 1829, near a mound, which I believe it's Bates Mound, Bates Mound, okay? So near a mound that was being furnished for the material to build a hotel in Chesterville. As they dug into the mounds, the workers dug up large human skeletons. The local physician examining the skeletons said that the skull could have easily fit over a normal man's head with no difficulty. Okay, so just picture that. You're digging in a mound. Why are you even doing that in the first place? Shame on you, okay? So they're really big skeletons that they unearthed inside of a mound. Okay. Another part of the skeleton had 2 rows of teeth compared to a modern man. Now, anybody that knows us as humans, normal humans, I guess we're going to call us the normal humans, if you have 2 rows of teeth, that means you're adolescent. So these things were tall. Okay. In the Ohio River Valley, Indian mounds abound. 1972, Seneca Township, Seneca Township, in Noble County, Ohio, in what is now called the Bates Mound. 3 skeletons were found. I'm going to plop a little article and picture right over here. I mean, you see it. It was in a newspaper article. Okay, because that's where I go and find all my research is old newspapers. I love doing it. It's so much fun. Okay, so All 3 skeletons unearthed were at least 8 feet tall in height, with bone structure proportional to their height. Another amazing discovery about these skeletons is that they all had double rows of teeth. Okay, so later in 1878, another discovery in the county of Ashtabula County, Ohio. Mounds were excavated on a land belonging to Peleg Sweet, a man of large features. Okay, in the first mound, they unearthed a skull and a jaw, which were such the size that the skull would cover Sweet's head and the jaw would easily have slipped over his face. Excavating further, they discovered these mounds contained the graves, estimated between 2,000 and 3,000. Many of the skeletons found were of gigantic proportions. According to Indian legend, there were 2 different races of strange humans that pre-existed their culture. One was the archaic people who had slender bodies with long, narrow heads. Okay? Slender bodies, long, narrow heads. Okay, so they were living in the Ohio River Valley prior to the Adinas, in what was assumed to be around 1000 BC. The Adinas moved into the area, coming up from the south to claim domination over the land. After a great war between them, the Archaics were destroyed by a more advanced and powerful race. From the Adinas, the art of mound building was established. They were the mound builders. David Cusick, a Tuscadora by birth, wrote in 1825 that along the legends of the ancient people, they were a powerful tribe. They were giants, and they had a considerable habitation in the Ohio Valley. He states that when the Great Spirit made the people, some of them became giants. They made themselves feared by attacking when most unexpected. After enduring the outrages of these giants for a great long time, the people band together to destroy them. With a final force of about 800 warriors, they successfully annihilated the abhorrent giant tribe. There were no giants anywhere left after this, and it was said that this was supposed to have happened around 2,500 winters before Columbus arrived to America. So around 1000 BC, at the time the Adinas seemed to have arrived in the Ohio Valley. So what do you guys think? Okay, so my conclusion here, before just listen to the end of the second story to find out if this was a true or false. But there were lots of different tribes, as we talked about in the Ross County, Ohio episode back to season 1. There was all kinds of indigenous people in the tribes that were here. They were established here as like a trading zone. The Ohio Valley was a vast trading post for all the tribes that were in Canada, America, and Mexico. They all traded together. I mean, isn't it possible that, some tribes could have been a bit taller than others for that time, Let me know what you think in the comments about this story. So, the next story, as we're moving on here, this story starts on June 20th, 1847, way up in the very northwest corner of the state, when a 10-year-old boy by the name of David Champ went missing. His father, Peter, was a wealthy member of a small community in Bryan, Ohio, and soon the whole town was on the search for this vanished child. After 5 days of combing the woods with no luck, the townspeople began focusing their suspicion on a 17-year-old half-witted drifter from Worcester named Daniel Heckerthorn. Okay? When located and confronted, Hecklethorn confessed to luring the young boy into the woods and giving him arson-laced candy. After it appeared that the poison was taking too long to produce its desired effect, Hecklethorn grabbed the child by the heels and swung him in circles to build momentum before directing his head first into the gnarled knot on the beech tree, successfully ending the life of David Champ. Heckerthorn then carried the body to a nearby stream where he concealed the crime by burying his victim in a pile of rotting wood. With this confession, one could lazily assume that this case was solved and final, but it was not that Hecklethorn continued talking. So we're going to put this picture of the Bryan, Ohio, the old jail building over here. It was a very small town at that time, okay? To describe the murderer, went on, he had long desired to learn the art of fortune telling, okay? So picture this, your 10-year-old son goes missing, all right? And a fortune teller shows up at your front door saying he knows what happened to your son. So here's where the story really begins. So the poor boy did lose his life. So according to Hecklethorn, Tyler had visited the stately Champ home and afterward concocted a plan in which his teenage understudy would murder the child, hide the body, and then the two would have to leave town for several months, finally gaining fortune upon their return when they would accurately, divinely locate the body. Because, they claim to be fortune tellers and they have these visions. Okay, so there was a problem with this plan. Number one, neither of them left town after the murder. Hecklethorn did try to hide though, didn't work. Number two, in the heat of summer, it would be very likely that the little body would be discovered before their intended absence was over, right? Either way, both were found guilty and sentenced to hang. They were. Taking into account his youth and inability, the court later decided to communicate with Daniel Hecklethorn's sentence from death to life in prison. Whereas Andrew Tyler was taken to the gallows downtown in Bryan, Ohio, January 26, 1849, to suffer a horribly botched and undignified execution. This was back when they killed people out in the streets for doing things to little kids. We should bring that back, don't you think? Maybe a little too barbaric. Did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. The trouble began when a mob anxious to witness the death of an accused child, tore down the privacy fence surrounding the gallows, thereby violating the state law that forbade public executions. So there's that. When there was Tyler's own speech to the assembled crowd, he strongly asserted his innocence and followed his address with a prayer for forgiveness for all who had sought his hurt and that they might meet in a happier world. That was kind of nice of him to say as he was getting mobbed to death. After his prayer, Tyler insisted that there only be 1 foot of slack in the hanging rope, and it was placed around his neck and the trap door was sprung. Was he done? Did it do its thing? No. In his short fall, the knot of the noose slipped around Tyler's neck and caught under his chin, leaving him completely suspended, but neither breaking his neck or causing strangulation. I'm actually going to put a picture up right here of the moment right before he fell through the trapdoor. I hope YouTube don't get mad about that, but YouTube don't play the video, Spotify does. So comment if you're watching on Spotify, because I need to know, okay? Because these videos are actually fun to me. It was said that no one would help but turn away from the gruesome sight as Tyler struggled and groaned in agony. Mercifully, the sheriff had the door raised and Tyler was spared for a few moments more. As the hanging rope was beginning, the sheriff asked Tyler if he still maintained his innocence, to which he replied, "I am innocent." And with that, the trapdoor was again sprung, with his last words being, "For God's sake, shorten the rope." And there is the tale of the execution of a clairvoyant, Ohio style. So let me know in the comments if you think this story is true or if you think this story is false. So after we do our listener submitted story, I'm going to let you know which story is true and which story is false. Okay, so this story is submitted by Kevin Pinsky. All right, so he says, "Time for a spooky story, kids. This is back from the 1990s when I was probably in my late teens. I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard my dad get up to use the bathroom, and then I heard him in the kitchen. But then the phone rang. I heard my dad say hello, and then nothing. He went back to bed. The next day, my mom told me about the phone ringing and said that when my dad answered it, he heard only a woman's voice say Mike, which is his name, over the phone, and then nothing. This happened exactly around the time that my grandmother, my dad's mom, had passed away. I think it was either the day of her showering or the day of her funeral. First, I thought that maybe the woman who called was one of my dad's aunts, but then why would they call in the middle of the night, say his name, and then hang up? Our phone didn't have caller ID back then, so there was no way to check who the number was from. It could have been my grandma reaching out one last time, or just an eerie coincidence that the phone happened to ring right when my dad went into the kitchen in the middle of the night and the caller spoke out his name. Interesting. I do find that I think we've had a couple of stories that are similar to this, to where it's like a loved one reaching out one last time over the phone. Or I think there was one story where they left a message on an answering machine back in the 90s. So that is really cool, and I'm glad that they are able to reach out. So thank you for your story, Kevin. This last story for this month's episode is submitted by an anonymous person. She said, "Well, tonight my 2 girlfriends and I have never been so frightened in all of our lives, and we are all 56 years old. We went to the pub for a tea and had 3 beers each after eating. The pub was really noisy and none of us felt like listening to headbanging music, so we decided to walk to my house where we could talk and laugh in peace. Fair enough. We left the pub around 9 p.m. on the dot because we didn't think about ringing a cab, so we saw at the time, but figured we should walk home we should walk some of our food off. I get it, okay. Plus, it's only a 20-minute walk, and when we turned off the main street from the pub, it's quite a long street. About halfway down, my friend said, "And what is that behind us?" The other friend and I laughed, as she's kind of a paranoid person as it is. But then she snapped and said, "I'm freaking serious." We both looked behind, and there was a really tall man in a black ankle-length coat walking about 100 meters behind us, and he was walking fast. I said, "Okay, let's not panic. Let's just walk quicker and we might lose him." At one stage, he appeared far away, and then my one friend said he's only about 50 meters away. We turned down a different street, and yet he was still there. The next turn we did, the street light blew at the corner right above us and said, "Run." At the stage, we were only about 200 meters from my house when we got there because we were all so petrified we couldn't get the keys in the door from the panic of it catching up to us. But finally we got in safe. We got inside. Time said 9:10 p.m. Wow. So we must have only been walking so fast that it's really a 20-minute walk, but we got there in half the time. My girlfriends are even too scared to go home in the dark, so they are staying here with me until light, which I'm very glad of. We've discussed it for hours and we still can't work out what it is, but one minute it was way back and the next minute it was practically right behind us. And my one friend said that she looked at it and it was grinning with a crooked smile. The other friend said it had its head down at one time and its chin was sewn to its chest. My God. I'm never walking home from that pub again, and my girlfriend said the same. I'm not saying it was a ghost, but it was for sure something unearthly. Holy moly. That's kind of like, I used to walk everywhere in my little hometown here. I used to walk everywhere, and that is one of my biggest fears right there. I am so glad the three of you... Whoa. Where'd we go? We are in the dark, y'all. That's creepy. We're back. All right, so I'm glad that the three of you got home safe, okay? And definitely bring the salt with you. Take some salt in your purse and toss it at it. Wow, that is really creepy. So, if you want to submit your own story to this podcast for me to read in my Ohio accent, feel free to submit a creepy story, a weird story, a glitch in the matrix, anything. It doesn't have to be in Ohio. Because from the way this was written, it was in, I think, the UK. Just guessing. But yeah, here is the email address right here. underthemoonparapod@gmail.com, and I will read your story on the show. So do you guys think the first story was true or false? The first story was false. The giant skeletons were a hoax. At least the three that they found are definitely a hoax. They didn't get away with it too long. People found out about it fairly quickly. So the first story was not true. The second story, though, the execution of the clairvoyant, the fake clairvoyant, yeah, that was a true story, and it was a very sad story, and I wanted to get that little boy's name out there because he can't be forgotten. Yeah, always hug your babies, everybody. Always hug your babies. All right, so that does it for this month. I know it was short and sweet, but I was getting bored with the old haunted buildings. I wanted to do something a little different. And next month's story is going to be like that, but with interesting Ohio people. Okay, so everybody, enjoy springtime because it's about to get hot and sticky out there for summer, because you know how summers in Ohio are, you know. So I hope you all have a great time, and we'll see you next time. Stay spooky.